All right, so let's talk about this today. World of Warcraft and add-ons. Add-ons have been a huge part of my life in World of Warcraft for 20 years now. I have played World of Warcraft since the very beginning. And, this great purge of add-ons that's coming for, midnight, how's it going to affect me? How's it going to affect other players? I have seen so many players up in arms about it, for daily boss mods, big wigs. Weak Auras has announced that they're no longer going to support a new add-on for midnight. So how does that play in factor in my life? So for me personally, I am paralyzed. I have zero finger usage. I cannot move my fingers at all. I am disabled. So add-ons have been a big part of my life inside of World of Warcraft. So coming from someone with a disability, I know on Twitter and WoW Twitter and all that, there have been a lot of discussion about, well, they're taking away accessibility for people. But me personally, like I said, I don't have finger usage. I can't move my fingers. I play with a pencil. I use my knuckles for mouse clicks. I enjoy PvP. I play a lot of PvP, but I am mediocre at best. I'll show you my shuffle rating, what it is right now. Currently it's at 1349. My blitz rating's at 1389. So I am a mediocre player at best. So when it comes to add-ons, I don't really depend upon add-ons to make my life easier. My main goal with add-ons is just for aesthetic purposes. I use weak auras for a couple of different things. A couple of them actually can be done in game with the spell alert notifications for frost mages and things of that nature. But the one thing that I do use for weak aura is the fact that it puts a circle around my mouse, makes it easier to see on screen. I get that. That can be done with other add-ons as well. So I'm not crying. I'm not upset about the disappearance of weak auras for midnight. I get it. People are concerned about losing of add-ons. Me personally, if it affected the way my UI looked, absolutely, I would be upset. I use LBUI. I used to create my own personal UI for based around Tuck UI. It was called Alhana UI. If you want to go back and look at what it looked like, it's on my channel and some very, very early videos. But here's the thing about it. Daily boss mods, big wigs, all these tracking add-ons that are out there, I honestly don't use them. Maybe that's why I'm a mediocre player. I don't know. But here's the thing about it. If you're solely dependent upon add-ons to make your WoW experience better, or being able to play or thinking you're being a better player by using add-ons, you might be at a disadvantage. So let's just touch briefly real quick on accessibility for World of Warcraft, for big wigs, daily boss mods, weak auras, and things of that nature. I saw tweets on Twitter talking about that specific thing, about a guild that is solely comprised of deaf World of Warcraft players. So they depend upon visual indicators to make their raid experience better. I get that. That's okay. But what I'm about to say is probably going to cause some controversy as well. But here's the thing. I know people who play every single day with no sound turned on, no daily boss mods, no big wigs, no game sound. I play with the music off because it distracts me. For me personally, I can't feel sometimes when I'm using my mouse whether or not to click. So I am dependent upon being able to hear that click when I press my hand down to be able to successfully click on the screen to move things of that nature. So there are workarounds to add-ons that do the things you're dependent upon right now. It may not be perfect. It may not be ideal. But again, coming from someone who's played World of Warcraft since 2004, I remember when there was an add-on out there, I used to play it primarily a healer. All you had to do was click one button and it would heal that person in frame. I remember when World of Warcraft banned that add-on because it oversimplified the game, and it was essentially on the terms of cheating for the game pretty much. So you might be saying to yourself, well, by limiting add-ons, what add-ons can do inside of a game, you're limiting a person's ability to have accessibility to a game. But here's the thing. I rated successfully. And when I say successfully, up until Legion, I rated for pretty much every single expansion that came out. When Shadowlands came out, Dragonflight came out, I really wasn't playing it, so I didn't raid. I haven't really rated it in the War Within. And that's simply because I pretty much only play PvP now. I've always played PvP throughout the game, but I didn't depend upon add-ons to make the game easier for me. I played the game and used the ability that I had and adjusted and adapted to the game to make it playable for myself. Again, I'm using a pencil to press keys on the keyboard. A lot of times I think the whole add-on situation is just a cop out for people who have become solely dependent upon add-ons to make the game easy for them. I remember back in Burning Crusade, you had to have a calculator to determine whether or not you were uncrushable or uncrittable as a tank. And when Blizzard did away with that, there was a big uproar about it. It's going to say, well, it's going to make tanking too easy. We're not going to be able to tank effectively, etc., etc. That has always been the name of the game when it comes to any game we play, whether it's World of Warcraft or any other game out there. So removing add-ons to a certain extent for things like I said, daily boss mods, big wigs, some of the tracking that is inside the PvP arenas. I recently started using big debuffs because it allowed me to see a much bigger indicator for how much time was left on my counter spell. Up before that, I really didn't use anything. I just used the standard buffs that were on unit frames. I use LVI. It shows debuffs and buffs on the unit frames. If they got rid of that, would that be the end of the world for me? Absolutely not. I will continue to play the game and I will continue to adapt and adjust in a way that like I've always done for the past 20 years. So for people out here crying about, oh, they're removing this, it's not going to make the game fair anymore. Well, here's the thing. If add-ons to track cooldowns for bosses are the only way that you're going to be able to defeat a boss, I think Blizzard does a pretty good indicator as well. And I'll show you my list of add-ons that I have in just a second, just to give you an idea of what add-ons I use, and I'll explain why I use the ones that I use. But anyway, let's just jump up here and I'll show you my list of add-ons. All right, so let me pull it up for you, just so you get an indication of what I'm using. Here's add-ons. And again, you see, when I move my mouse, I have issues moving my mouse. So add-on skins, basically this skins everything on there. All the things, that is basically tells me of what I need to be tracking. Angler, it makes it easy. I can press one key to be able to fish. Again, that's probably the most accessible thing inside of the entire game that I use. And it's not really because of accessibility for myself. It's because I'm just being lazy and I just don't want to have to cast and recast and, put on lures and things of that nature. Auctionator just basically makes selling stuff on the auction house a lot easier. I remember back in the day, I used trade skill window whenever I was really heavy into the auction house. Makes a lot of automation easier selling things in the auction house. If they got rid of it, would that be the end of the world for me? Absolutely not. So now let's get on to the ones that, people may be worried about. Battleground enemies is basically unit frames. I use it for unit frames to show my arena opponents inside of arenas. I don't use it for battlegrounds because it's just too cluttery for me. Big debuffs, it's like I was talking about a while ago. Basically shows my counter spell in a bigger debuff, and that can be, is it going to be an end of the world if that got removed? No, absolutely not, because I really didn't use it up until recently. And here's the one big one right there. That's big wigs. Big wigs, and daily boss mod and other trackers, essentially said, get out of this, move out of this. Honestly, I have big wigs installed. I raid, but I honestly pay no attention to it anymore because it just kind of all filters into the background because I'm looking at the screen. Blizzard has pretty much, and I'll say this, dumbed down the game to the point that if you can't see the fire coming to you, something's going on. And I get there are visually impaired people out there. That's why there are high contrast settings inside of the game to be able to make it more visually appealing and so people can see the game. So again, there's just a lot of ways to work around not having particular add-ons. And if the only way you can beat a boss is through add-on, this is just my personal opinion, you're doing it wrong. If you've got to basically not cheat your way, but make it so easy. And hey, I'll be the first one to admit, playing other games, I play them on easy mode so I can get through them. Because again, I'm limited by what I can do with my hands. But when it comes to World of Warcraft, I play it the best I can with what ability I've got. Another add-on like capping, for example, just basically tells you, hey, this is how much time left before this caps. Now here's another one, details damage meter. Let me scroll back up here just a little bit. I have it installed, but as you can see on my screen right now, it's minimized. I used to use it just to get an idea of how much damage I was doing, how well my DPS was in comparison to other people's. And I get people, track it for raids, that you're meeting a DPS threshold mark to be able to take down a boss, because if you don't, the boss enrages, etc. Learning to play the game shouldn't be solely dependent upon add-ons. When I first started the game, I played with the straight classic UI. And it wasn't until later that I really got into using add-ons. My first ones I started using was Keith UI, I think was that. And then I started building my own based around Tuck UI. So if I lost that, would it be the end of the world? No, because hey, the game's still the game. I like LBY because I love the way my game looks with, skin and things of that nature. All right, so let's talk about the biggest point of contention, and that is weak auras. I'll show you what weak auras I run inside of my game. Let me hit WA. So here's what I use. I created my own personal mouse center. It lets me see my mouse on screen. It's a little bit better. Again, we got one for rated PvP win loss. Whenever I open up my, player frame, it shows me how many matches I've won, how many matches I've lost, what my percentage of win ratio is. But again, I can still see that just by mousing over what's inside of the game. It's just aesthetics. It doesn't really matter. The Sun King was one I was using for Fire Mage. I don't use it anymore. Frost Mage, it basically shows what spell alerts whenever my Frost Mage hits certain things inside the game. Without them, it isn't something that enhances the game. It just basically makes it look cooler. I'll show you what my Frost Mage looks like. Let me swap over to it 1 second and I'll show you. All right, so here we are on my Frost Mage. We're on the target dummy. So let's go ahead and cast Spell, and it is pretty much, and as you can see, I've got tracking, cooldowns left on my Icy Paints, how much is left. We've got tracking for a lot of other stuff as well. My Glacial Spike ability. And that is pretty much it. We've got a tracker for our shards as well when I need to use it for Glacial Spike. But would it be the end of the world if I didn't have this? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, let's turn it off and we'll show you exactly what it looks like inside of the game with Blizzard's spell alert opacity on. All right, so I've disabled every single add-on inside of my game. So let's see what we got now. Let's see, we got Frost. And again, Brain Freeze, there we go. Visual alerts, casting Glacial Spike. Again, everything inside of the game that I was using weak auras for can be pretty much handled by the game itself. Brain Freeze, Brain Freeze. It's giving me visual indicators. So here's the thing, Blizzard does actually a pretty good job when it comes to accessibility inside of the game. At least in my experience anyway. I've got no sound going on inside of the game, so I can't hear anything that's happening inside of the game. So I really understand why some people are worried about the disappearance of add-ons inside of World of Warcraft when it comes to accessibility options. But I also see the other side of the argument as well, that people are making the game automated for themselves, almost to the point that they really don't have to play, other than the fact because they're following an add-on. And to me, that just speaks to the fact that you don't want to take the time. And like I said, I'm lazy when it comes to this game as well. I depend on add-ons too, like I said, with Angler, because I don't want to take the time to redo all my fishing equipment. But add-ons in the game are not going to make or break the game, and are not going to be the end of the world for me. Do I want to look at my UI looking like this? Absolutely not. I love the way my UI looks based around LBY. Will I always be a mediocre PvP player? Maybe so. Is the add-on going to make me any better? Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But it's not going to break the game, and it shouldn't make the game to the point that is the only way you can get past the game. And I get that a lot of the conversation is around mythic rating and high-end gameplay and things of that nature. Whatever happened just being around skill. My skill isn't great. Like I said, I'm mediocre at best. But I still enjoy the game. And if an add-on is determined in the fact of whether or not you're going to be good in the game, probably not all that great to begin with. I know some people are going to be upset by this video. I know there's going to be ones out there because, hey, you're not making the game accessible for everybody. Unfortunately, that's life. Life hasn't been fair a lot of times, but I make do with the game with what I've got. And I'll always be playing World of Warcraft to the best of my ability Whether they remove an add-on, I depend on. Whether they add other features inside of the game that make it more easy for me to use. We'll see. I don't know what the future of World of Warcraft is, but again, I've been playing it for 20 years, and I'm not going to stop. So let me know, what is your thought on the whole add-on thing? Do you agree with the fact that, you know, Blizzard is going to be limiting what type of combat add-ons are available? Are you happy with it? Are you upset by it? Is it going to affect how you play the game? Um, I don't know. For me personally, as long as I can make it look like I want to, I don't really care about much else. Maybe because I'm not a high-end player, maybe because I'm not a professional player. I don't know. But we'll see what the future holds for World of Warcraft. But in the end, I'm still going to keep playing it.